Hi, I'm Jeremy Imlach, and I am a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
It's time once again for another ResultsLeader.fm. This is the only show on the internet dedicated to the coaches and consultants who are getting results for their clients. Welcome back to another episode. Stoked that you're here. And I am going to reward you with, you guessed it, another amazing interview. In today's show, how to avoid scope creep to do a better job for your clients, why failing fast makes you more successful, and how your mental health contributes to your business. Well, today, growth strategist Jeremy Imlach joins us on the show. Let's jump in. Jeremy, long time in the making. So glad to have you on the show. Are you ready to rock this thing?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here and to just get things going. Excited that we could finally make this happen.
Let's do it, man. What book have you given most as a gift?
It's a book called Do Nothing and Do Everything by, I'm going to butcher this, but I think Guiguan Zhao. It's based on these Taoist principles, but it's very applicable to just general life and knowledge and business as well. It's very much tells the story of when to do something and when not to do something, right? And to understand the fine line and the balance between that and life. And so it gave me a lot of great insights, not into just my own personal development, but business development as well.
I have not heard of that one yet, and it is going on my reading list now. So
I'll have to send you a copy.
And Taoist, we haven't talked about Taoism on this show ever, and it's like 160 episodes in. So thanks for
there we go.
Twist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's story time, man. And I'd like you to tell us a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest stories that I have within the last couple of years is, landed a pretty big contract. And things were, seemingly that was a very successful opportunity for us, but it ultimately ended up going completely out of scope and obviously not really financially worth it once it starts to, scope creep. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into this sort of trap of not structuring an offer, whether it's a product or a service, and, having to really grow through these pain points of setting ourselves up for success. And so we like to lean into this concept of fail fast, right? Because it's really only a failure that if you don't learn anything, right? And so that was one of the biggest failures that we had, because a lot of the clients, we're 5-star reviews 100% of the time, right? And so for us to have a client that was ultimately dissatisfied and not even willing to leave a review for us was obviously that was a very big failure in our eyes for the immediacy, but ultimately helped us to structure our offer in a way that was scalable.
Okay. Now you used a word that I think you're breaking new ground on the show, but
I love it.
Would you explain to the listeners what scope creep is?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you design these sort of projects, basically what you're doing is you're creating a scope of the project. And so in this specific example, the scope of the project was pretty ambiguous with developing an e-commerce platform and e-commerce UX UI experience. But it started to creep into, okay, what's our marketing voice? What is our branding? How do we build collateral? And so the scope creep essentially is how this initial idea of what you're building, that's the scope. And continuously, the asks just creep beyond the scope that you had initially set out for. So whether, again, it's a product or a service, whatever that offer is, and you start to creep on what that initial offer is, that's essentially what scope creep means.
Now, let's play a game here.
Awesome.
So I get the idea of scope creep, and I've experienced it since we were in the podcast factory. That happens. But how do you know the difference between putting up walls or guards from scope creep and the possibility of innovation to make what you do better?
Absolutely. I think that is sort of that learning process of failing fast, because like in our eyes, this was a failure, right? But ultimately, we still ended up making money. We ultimately ended up creating an offer that was more structured. And so it does differentiate, obviously, between what it is that you're offering. But a lot of the times you can look to competitors and understand, okay, how are they structuring their offer in a way where they're doing it successfully and what it is that they're implementing. But when you go through this process, what you're learning is you're learning how to interact with your specific market, right? And each individual niche in the market that you're playing in is going to react in a very specific way. And so you need to understand how your market reacts. And I think that was probably the biggest challenge for 2022 for everybody, was understanding this concept that, the target audience that you had, your primary audience in 2021 was not your audience in 2022. And so a lot of people, us included, had trouble adjusting to that. Was, what have we been doing successfully that worked? It wasn't working this year. And, with the huge paradigm shifts that we've seen within the economy and everything from the workforce all the way to inflation, I think is going to have these continuously resounding effects over the next couple of years, where this idea of agility is going to be redefined and just completely moved into a new category of understanding. Contingency plan doesn't even put it in the right category, right?
Yeah, it has been an interesting year. What would you say is the most worthwhile investment that you have ever made?
Yeah, so I would probably put this into two different buckets. One of them specifically being my mental health, and then the other one being my ability as a leader. So as we've kind of alluded to, right, this year was tough on everyone. I don't think I've really spoken to anybody that was like, yes, 2022 was great, right? I haven't gotten that yet. I don't think that I will. So I think more than ever, we're all just in need of understanding how to create and foster a healthy mind-body relationship, right? And beyond that, how we interact with the universe and the energy around us, right? Without going too far down the path of any type of spirituality or anything like that. But I think it is, this year has been eye-opening to a lot of people, and myself included, about how important investing in mental health really is. And then the structure of how to provide and get mental health resources, I think, is going to change in the next couple of years as well, kind of the infrastructure. And then the second piece of that, obviously, being the leadership skill set. I think that's a consistent investment with, kind of the position that I put myself in, being a leader of an organization, and then specifically being a leader of an organization that helps leaders of organizations. So really understanding what it means to be a leader, how to be an effective leader, and then how to be a consistently growing leader as well, I think is, like I said, a consistent investment that needs to be made.
I have to ask, man, what are some of the investments? Like, can you give us some concrete examples of some investments that you make in your mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So therapy, I think, would probably be one of the biggest ones, just talking to a therapist in just the most, incredible ways that you wouldn't necessarily. I think a lot of people, especially myself included, when they think about therapy, they think about black couch, notepad, right? Very clinical. But, I get on the phone with my therapist and we talk about video games. We talk about the way that I treat myself, and we talk about successes, right? Being able to reframe, failures and really understand. So it's really a positive growth experience as a human being. It's not necessarily just, I'm having a mental block, I'm having X, Y, Z. It's actually, how do I continue to grow and how do I continue to be the best version of myself? Because this is what I've come to realize is the best version of ourselves exists within ourselves already. We have the tools to get through, chisel out the marble to build this beautiful structure, a beautiful statue of who we are. And then beyond therapy, I think meditation practice is something that I've heavily invested in the past year, that like courses and programs and teachers, I think is something that, is underrated because, again, there's a lot of stigmatism around this stuff, right? With meditation, you don't have to be a monk to meditate. Right. And so I've spoken to, and I've worked with businesses in this mental health realm that really have opened my eyes into the vast amount of resources from beginner to novice levels that you can really dive into and customize to your liking. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the biggest ones.
I like it, man. What are some mad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
Yeah, gosh. So probably the most consistent ones that I hear are related to fundraising, especially at the early stage of development for companies. And the thing about that, right, is that you're going to hear different advice from everybody that you speak to when it comes to fundraising, again, especially at the early stage. But what I hear most often is that you need to really perfect your pitch before you start actually going out and pitching. Like you really have to hone in on, okay, get the structure, get this. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs spend months getting their pitch together. They're not going through this feasibility test phase, which is basically the only way that you're going to perfect your pitch is by gathering feedback from your audience, right? And I think that a lot of people who aren't necessarily familiar with fundraising, again, especially at the early stage, they're constantly thinking like, man, I got to get this right. Even with products, right? Like, man, I got to get this right before I put it in front of the market. And it's no, your audience is going to tailor it to be what it needs to be successful.
Put it out into the world, right? The only way you're going to perfect your pitch is to actually pitch.
Right, exactly. And they're not building the network to do that at those early stages and even later stages, right? Like you don't know how many emails I get where it's like, hey, would you be interested in investing? Here's my pitch deck. And we're not even a venture firm. I'm like, wow, well, you didn't do your research, first of all. Second of all, you're wasting your time. The most valuable resource that you have as an individual, you're wasting it. And not only that, but you're wasting my time, right? Not necessarily because I respond with, hey, we can help you with these services to help you with targeting and, all the, build an archetype and all this sort of stuff. So I think that strategically approaching fundraising is something that has been underestimated by a lot of the expertise in the field.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a public service announcement. We're going to get right back into this show, but I wanted to ask you a question. If you have been listening to the show for any amount of time and you've picked up even one single tip, then I need your help. Get the word out. Tell people about resultsleader.fm. Share it on social media. Share it on your email. Share it anywhere. #ResultsLeaderFM. Now let's jump back into the interview. Why do results matter?
Results matter because they equal measurable growth, right? Without measurable growth, you're really just floating in space. Is this working? Is that working? Maybe, who knows, right? It's more valuable to know if something isn't working than to not see any results, right? Because that means you have meaningless data. Data is meaningless unless it's given a purpose, unless it's given a reason, unless it's given some sort of meaning, right? What do those results really mean? And then you can continue to adjust because results isn't just positive, right? Results can be, if you're testing a hypothesis, you could prove a null hypothesis to basically be stating that you aren't getting the results that you expect to get. But those are still results, right? And results being measurable is the biggest thing here because without measuring that growth, whichever direction, they're not results. They're not something that you can work with and grow from.
What area of your business would you like better results?
Oh, gosh. I think that this kind of falls into the state with everybody. Lead generation. Right? More. You can never have enough leads. And if you have more leads than you can handle, that's a good problem to have.
What are you guys doing now? I mean, how are you generating leads at the moment?
So we're testing a couple of different channels right now. Ads isn't necessarily something that has worked for us in the past, just because of the field that we're in, right? Specifically being consulting and being strategy and growth consulting. There are a lot of people in that field that, if we do paid AdWords, the budget gets eaten very, very quickly. And so what we are doing is testing more of this account-based marketing perspective because of our offers specifically, right? And so we want to generate the right leads first and foremost. And so one thing that we are specifically doing in order to do that is really looking at how we qualify leads specifically from a growth perspective. So what we did was we took the technology readiness levels from NASA and we translated that to growth readiness levels. We call it GRL. So we took this successful program for how to build technology and we just translated it into how to build a company, right? And so now we've laid out this very clear, structured way to help people grow throughout this process of, everything from the earliest conception, the napkin stage, right? Where you're drawing stuff on a napkin and bringing them through these different stages of growth specifically. And so being able to take that concept, work it into a framework, and then help start answering the question, and that growth readiness level, I should mention, is how we qualify, is an aspect of how we qualify the best targets for us to really go after, because we might get, I don't know, a bunch of GRL1s or GRL2s. They're not financially as opportune as a GRL4 plus. Right. And you can make up your own qualifications, but there are plenty of qualifications. What are the employee size? What are the annual revenues? What tech stack are they using? There's all these things that you can use to really understand how you target. But then on the back end of that, when it comes to building an awareness funnel, you're really answering the questions of, so people who are looking at this awareness stage, they don't know what their problems are. So you need to help them understand, what are your problems and what are the solutions to those problems? You don't even need to mention your solutions. So something, for example, like I put out into a blog post, what is market research? How do you do market research, right? These are things that people are looking for, that they need help with, that we can provide. This is just content marketing at its basic levels, right? So we're leaning into basic level content marketing, but doing that through the lens of the GRL phases that we've essentially established.
That's so slick. That is so slick.
I appreciate it.
So what results are you most proud of?
Oh, man. Just honestly, everything that we've been able to create with Argona, from hitting revenue goals all the way to the recognition. So just like a little backstory, we started Argona Partners after graduating college, right? So here we are, gosh, what were we at that time? 22, 23 maybe? Getting out of college with business degrees and really starting a consulting firm was like crazy, right? Like, how did people trust these college kids who just graduated? Not even MBAs. And now I'm at the point where I've coached MBA and judged MBA programs. I don't have an MBA. I have a basic marketing degree that I got, in 2017. And so for me, being able to get to where we are, so just this year for 2022, we were recognized as the #1 B2B consulting firm on clutch.co. And we've been recognized year over year, but we started at maybe 6 and now we're at #1. And just to see that level of growth and the recognition, it's not just me, but it's the entire team that's putting in all this work to grow something that started out on a napkin, right? And so I think that just the recognition is probably, that's what helps validate that we're growing in a sustainable manner.
Man, that's awesome. Any parting thoughts you want to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now?
Gosh, just take care of yourselves, guys. Honestly, this year was so hard on everybody. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways from this year, from not just myself, but from everybody that I've spoken to, so this is kind of like a cumulative amount of voices coming into this, to just say, take care of yourselves. The grind culture needs to stop. It really needs to stop, because we're killing ourselves and we have this entire universe to enjoy, right? I've always been the kind of person my entire life to go after that big goal, and then the goalpost keeps moving and I keep going after that next goal and just and it's tiresome. And that grind culture, it ultimately leaves you at the end just feeling as though, what have you really accomplished? And it's hard to frame those accomplishments if you're constantly reaching for the next accomplishment. And so, take care of yourselves, enjoy the journey, and make sure that you guys are experiencing this universe, because that's what we're really here to do. And like me, right? I enjoy business. That is what I enjoy learning. I enjoy knowledge. I enjoy sharing, and I enjoy, all of these things that from a business perspective make a lot of sense, but I don't want that to keep me from enjoying the rest of the universe, right?
Powerful. Where can our listeners get more from you?
Absolutely. So you can find everything that you would need at argonapartners.com. It's named after the Argo from Greek mythology. So just add an NA after that, argonapartners.com. You can reach us at team@argonapartners.com. I mean, we've got plenty of free resources out there. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out our resource center on our website. Really, we are here to help entrepreneurs, because it's a lonely journey and we need to be there for each other. So reach out to us and let's see how we can help.
Beautiful. We will share links to everything in the show notes. Thank you, Jeremy, for hanging out with us. And thank you, Results Leaders, for tuning in. Another episode is in the can. That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm.
now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.